There's a lot of great image generators now, but Midjourney still wins for almost every use case. It has changed a lot over the past year, the largest change being the launch of the website. It's a gigantic improvement over Discord for usability, aesthetics, inspiration, just all around better everything. So I've broken everything down with visualizations to help understand every parameter, systems for prompting, resources, style reference explorers, tons of examples, some more unique workflows and lesser used techniques, everything you need to master Midjourney as a complete beginner or a longtime user. And once you get the hang of Midjourney, it feels like magic. Let's jump right in here and get oriented with the site. I'm not going to talk about anything in Discord. This will be solely focused on the site because it's just so much better. Although everything will also apply to Discord if you want to use it there. Start out on the Explore tab where you'll see images other people have generated with different ways to sort them. It is the best spot for endless inspiration. Using the search box, you can search through by keyword to find things for inspiration or to use as style and image references. When you click on an image, it will show the full prompt and parameters they used. Click here to use the prompt or here to use it as a style or image reference. You can also do that by dragging it up to the prompt bar. And you can do that with multiple images to blend them. This mushroom has these little lights that made me think of a carousel, so I ran with that as a style and image reference and came out with this. We'll deep dive into all of that later. A really cool feature is when you hover over an image, if you click the little magnifying glass, it will pull up other similar images. I make a habit of liking any images that I really like, either the concept or style. Then I can sort by liked images and see them all. You can find amazing inspiration this way to never run out of ideas. As you can see, I like a lot of weird stuff. Sometimes it's fun to just find the weirdest picture, click the magnifying glass, then find the weirdest picture out of those and repeat until you have nightmares. Or maybe that's just me. In the middle where it says Imagine, we have the prompt bar. To generate, just type in here and hit enter. I'll start with a single word, imagination. Send it. A quick tip is you can hit the up arrow to get your prompt back into the box. This dropdown on the right will open up the parameters. I'll cover all of those in a second, but they're easy to use. Just slide them around and then generate again. And this number popped up here that shows how many you currently have generating. That's on the Create tab, which I can open and watch them generate and see the prompts and parameters on the side. Then this Archive tab shows all your previous generations as thumbnails, so it's easier to look through your history and to organize. There's different ways to sort and view these too. Just images you've upscaled, only landscape or portrait, or older versions of Midjourney, things like that. You can change the layout to full so you see the entire images instead of just the square thumbnails, or you can change the size. And you can search through by date if you hover on the bar on the right, so you don't have to scroll through thousands of images to go back. I highly recommend getting into the habit of liking good generations you make, so you can find them easier later. You can create folders by either manually selecting images, hold down Shift, then click and drag to select, or you can also create smart folders. So say I want every logo I've made. I just type the word logo, then Midjourney instantly creates a folder with every time I've used the word logo in a prompt. I'll also mention that down near the bottom, you can switch between light and dark mode, or just leave it on dark mode all the time, like a normal person. Now next to create, I can see it's finished. Averages around 30 seconds to complete. So I'll click that, and these images look amazing. And now I can go open up any of these generations, and there's a whole list of options I can do with these from here. Vary, upscale, reframe, repaint. A lot of that is pretty intuitive how it works, but we'll dive deeper into that as we go through. These images are awesome. These one-word prompts are really fun to see how Midjourney visualizes a concept. You have no idea what's going to come out on the other side, but it's fun. I've done a bunch of these. You can prompt with emojis too. So yeah, type a word, get a cool image, that's great, but we want to have more control. The main ways to control the output are through parameters, prompting, and references. You can do all of that right up here. It's incredible just how much is possible all within this little area. Clicking here will let you upload images for image, style, and character references, or drag them here like I showed before. The icon on the right gets me back to the parameters. So in short, parameters change the way Midjourney interprets your prompt. That lets you explore and fine-tune an infinite amount of aesthetic directions. I'll start with just the parameters that are here when you click this dropdown. These are your main settings. When you change one, it will apply to every prompt going forward until you change it again. Under image size, we've got portrait, square, and landscape, or you can drag the slider to adjust the aspect ratio. They make it really easy. There's tons of reasons for using any of these, not only based on where you may be posting the images, but it also influences the composition and feel of them. If you want an aspect ratio that isn't here, it doesn't look like it, but you can actually type right in here to replace the numbers with what you want. Now I've got 1:4 in there. Maybe I need a bookmark. Giraffe on roller skates. Or we could flip that for a panorama of a concert hall. Or you could take that even more extreme if you want, like this layout for an 8-bit side-scroller adventure game. You'll see when I hit up to get the prompt back, it shows the aspect ratio parameter at the end. So every parameter can be typed manually. They will all start with a --, and they always go at the end of your prompt. Also, anytime you do type a parameter manually, it will override what you have in this dropdown. I have all of these parameters as well as all the others we'll cover in one cheat sheet that you can use as a reference. That's down in the description, along with a ton of other Midjourney resources. There's also a free ChatGPT resource bundle provided by HubSpot. There's a total of 5 PDFs that go in depth on how you can utilize ChatGPT in your career to get ahead, solve problems, or save time. My favorite is called How to Supercharge Your Workday with ChatGPT. It covers specific examples of how ChatGPT can be used in various industries: sales and marketing, project management, enhanced decision-making and problem-solving, time management and organization. It walks through step-by-step with different tips, and even has a section titled 100 Ways to Try ChatGPT Today with 100 sample prompts you can use and modify. No matter what career you have, there's sure to be a bunch in there that apply. And that's just one of the resources in the bundle, which again is completely free. Just use the link in the description to go download that. I have been happy to partner with HubSpot to provide free resources to the people that watch this channel. Moving on to aesthetics, we've got stylization, weirdness, and variety. Stylization adjusts how artistic the image is. And by artistic, that means favoring aesthetic colors, composition, and forms. So here's a good one to demonstrate that: a child's drawing of a cat. The low stylization definitely looks more like a child drew it. On the high end, it favors an artistic output, which looks great, but you would have a very talented child if they're drawing that. Here's examples on some more types of prompts. So a coffee shop logo. Low stylization is more minimalist. The higher end gets more complex. With this holographic car, these first shots look pretty realistic. As it goes up, it gets more saturated and contrasty, just looks more staged and edited. In the selfies with Bigfoot, the low stylize has poorly framed photos that feel more authentic. As we go up, it's more like they're taking perfect photos for Instagram. And that totally gives away that it's AI. The real Bigfoot would never do that. In a more artistic style, this abstract tree of life, as you move up, it adds more contrast and depth. Or with a portrait shot like this one, it starts out showing a lot of details in the face, then starts to move younger and more of that filtered look. So the low end follows the prompt more closely. The higher end puts aesthetics first. The default of 100 is a pretty good balance between those. I rarely take this to the high end, but I do actually like to go between these values, particularly on the low end, like 50 or 75. To do that, type -- stylize space 50. You can also just type -- Either works. 0 usually doesn't look very good unless you have a really detailed prompt. A lot of the time I stay in the range of probably 40 to 200. Weirdness is to explore unconventional aesthetics. It's really fun. It can lead to some very unique outcomes. I usually keep this on the lower end, but there is definitely times when you want to explore and get more unconventional. Here's a simple prompt: an apple on a table. So it starts with a very literal and simple image. Then as I increase the weirdness, I start to get more unique compositions. Angles and perspectives you would never expect. How about clown sitting at a bus stop? That might get a little weirder. All right, these first ones are a traditional looking clown. 2 of them are just Pennywise, and they're at normal looking bus stops. At 600, we start getting one where the clown is off to the side on the ground with his foot sticking out, or this one on the bottom right is not like any bus stop I've ever seen. A lot more unusual at 1200. I don't even want to open this one up to figure out what's going on here. We've got more different poses and angles. Then it tests out some black and white and long exposures. I ran a few at 3000. We've got some selective coloring and just all sorts of weird bus stops and interesting poses and compositions. This is a pretty mild prompt. If you go with something more out there, the weird parameter can definitely take you to some strange places. I want to show one with a more specific prompt like this one, which is a good example of how much detail you can add into a prompt in Midjourney. It nailed every bit of this. But when I increase the weirdness a little bit, it quickly goes from beautiful framing and people and poses to more unusual. But it already has lost the setting of a fine dining restaurant and the lighting and color grading. It retains most of the rest of the details through all of these, but it defaults to less attractive people and poses, like while they're in the middle of eating or looking bored or annoyed with each other. If you want a weird image that is still conventionally attractive, you can try increasing the stylize parameter. Variety is how varied the outputs are. The lower values will have more consistent results, and then higher values will lead to a wider range of compositions. Now, I might bump this up when I'm exploring. Then when I start honing in on something I want and am getting specific with my prompt, I'll start lowering that to get consistency. And when you send this, it's actually called the chaos parameter. This one's pretty straightforward, so here's just a couple examples. This is all fairly minor variations. Then we start to get a wider range of interpretations. So to summarize what these are and how they're different from each other, Stylize controls how strongly Midjourney's default aesthetic is applied. Weird controls how unusual an image is compared to previous Midjourney images. Chaos controls how diverse the initial grid images are from each other. They're all different, but all work together and influence each other as well. They make it just really easy to use with these sliders, or you can type them manually to get numbers in between. For mode, we have standard or raw. Raw gives you more control over your image and has less automatic beautification applied. Basically, it listens more closely to your words and interprets them more literally. It is especially useful for photographic styles. If you want images that are as realistic as possible, that will be style raw and low stylized value. Side-by-side comparisons are the best way to show this one. I very often will just try both. So here's against different photographic prompts. Now here with some more artistic styles. For versions, version 6 is the default right now, which is currently the latest version, but you can select previous versions of Midjourney if you'd like to, all the way back to version 1. 6 has the best prompt coherence and knowledge, and is generally the most advanced and photorealistic. It does tend to add a lot more details too, which you may not want. 5.2 was also great and can be a little easier to get results by just typing in keywords. There's also Niji, which was trained to have a much wider knowledge of anime and illustration styles, but it can give interesting results for other styles as well. So those are the main ones to use that, generally speaking, will give the highest quality. You can go back further. Those images won't be as high quality, but can be fun for an experiment. Personalize will use your own personal aesthetic preferences to influence the generation. You have to rank image pairs to train the algorithm on your preferences. I love what my personalization does to the images, but this is a bigger topic that needed a dedicated section. I'll go over this closer to the end. It will just be turned off until then. For speed, I'll just run a prompt at each of these speeds and let it run in real time as I explain it. The default for speed is fast. That's what I use almost all of the time. There is a cap on GPU time for every month, depending on which plan you have. It's roughly 1 minute of GPU time per generation. That means the basic plan is around 200 generations per month on fast mode. Standard is around 900. Pro, 1800, and Mega, 3600. You also have the option to buy more GPU time if you run out. Also, if you're on the standard plan and up, you get unlimited generations in relax mode. They do take longer to generate, roughly 1 to 10 minutes, depending on the time of day. So that can be a good option, especially if you run out of minutes and don't want to buy more. And then there's also turbo mode, which generates 4 times faster, but uses twice as many subscription GPU minutes as a fast mode job. You can earn free GPU hours by rating images under the tasks tab. This is also how you train that personalization into Midjourney. The top 2,000 rankers per day will get a free fast hour. This used to take only around 5 minutes of ranking to earn a fast hour, but now that they've added personalization, people are using it a lot more right now, so it will most likely take longer. Fast and turbo were done quick, but this relax mode is still generating. There's 2 manual parameters I want to mention here before moving on to prompting. The first is the no parameter, for if there's something specific you don't want in your image. So I want a bowl of fruit with no bananas. So dash no space bananas. Send that and it will come back with no bananas. So that is a really useful one. And the other I'll mention is seed. So if you don't know, Midjourney and other diffusion models, they start by creating an initial field of visual noise, then they refine that noise, then gradually transform that into the final image. So each time you generate, it uses a random seed number to generate the initial field of noise. So to get the seed number, go down to more over here, then click copy, then seed. Now I'll run the same prompt with -- seed space, then paste that number. Now here's what that looked like with and without the seed. Now here's that same seed with completely different prompts. It does influence the scene, but not in a way that's very predictable. So I used the same seed for a lot of those comparisons, like the child's drawing of a cat. That's why the composition was so similar across those. If I didn't specify, it would have used a random seed each time and they would have looked a lot different, like this. It still makes sense what the stylized parameter was doing, but it's not as direct of a comparison. All right, one other thing I'll mention here is permutations. It's not a parameter, but you can use permutations to run different variations of your parameters or prompt without having to type each of them out. I did that for most of these examples. To run at each of the different stylized values, use a curly bracket, then each value separated by commas, then close the curly bracket. And when I send that, you can see it's running the same prompt with each of those stylized values. You can do the same thing with words in your prompt. Like if I want to test out different colors or camera angles, just anything. And I'll demo more examples using that as we go through. I know that all seems like a lot if it's the first time you're hearing it, but it all gets pretty intuitive once you understand them and have used them just a few times. There are more parameters not in this box, some based around references, which are really powerful for guiding the scene, but I want to switch it up for a bit and cover prompting before we get into that. Prompting is a big topic, so it's a long section. We've got all those parameters, but they don't do anything unless they have a prompt to interpret. The prompt is still the primary driver, although that will change some when we get into reference images. And it's important to note that there's no right way to prompt. You will never find the perfect prompt. It always takes some experimentation and guiding and bouts of serendipity to get something you like. But having a structure to prompt with can help a lot. The simple approach is this: scene, subject details, setting details, style details. I guess you could call it the 4 S's: scene, subject, setting, style. And by scene, I mean an overview of the scene using just generic archetypes and keywords. All right, so I'll start with the scene and then just build it out to show how it changes. An anthropomorphic barn owl exploring a dimly lit abandoned temple. I'll do 16:9 and style raw. All right, that looks good, but not at all what I'm going for. So I'll add some details about the owl. The owl is wearing cult robes and a hood and holding a burning torch. And calling back to the term you used in the first sentence, in this case, the owl, will help Midjourney know what you're describing instead of thinking it's a new character. Same thing when describing the setting. So I will call back with the temple has dusty relics and faded murals on the walls, dark and mystical atmosphere with soft, eerie lighting. This already is pretty much exactly what I was looking for. I had this kind of cinematic, dark fantasy vibe, like Pan's Labyrinth or something along those lines. If I wanted to describe that, I could use the director's name in the style of Guillermo del Toro, or find the type of camera or film grain it was shot on. I usually have better results from using film grains rather than camera names, which makes sense. It looks like there were 3 film stocks used. I'll go with 35mm Kodak Vision 2 500T 5218. All right, and that looks a lot more consistent. I could refine that a little more now that I have Pan's Labyrinth in my head. Instead of soft, eerie lighting, I'll switch to low-key lighting and deep shadows. And to refine that, I'd start experimenting with parameters from here, like up and down in stylize, 50, 75, 200, and 300. Then try standard instead of raw. Then I'd just iterate until it's perfect. But this looks great here. I think you get the idea. So I'll do another one in a photorealistic style, this time with multiple people, all human. Candid shot of 3 friends at a cafe. I'll send that, then hit up to get the prompt back and add some details. I'll call back with the friend on the left is an African-American man wearing a blue button-up shirt. Then again, I'll say the friend in the middle is a blonde Caucasian woman wearing a green blouse. The friend on the right is an Asian woman wearing a sundress with a floral pattern. iPhone photo. I used the friend for each of those to make sure it knew I was referring to the original friends. This is more important when you have more different archetypes, like if I used a man, a woman, and a dog in the scene. You can see what the defaults for Midjourney tend to look like if you don't describe the subject. This one looks great. It nailed it in almost every one of them. And like always, I could test out different stylized values. 0 usually looks pretty rough, but these others below 100 have them looking at each other more like they're having a conversation, which is what I was intending by saying candid shot, although it would have helped to write that out in the prompt. And the higher up you go, the more posed and filtered they look, and lower cut the shirts get, apparently. When you use Style Raw and words like candid and iPhone photo, it's actually pretty insane how realistic they can look. When I say details, that's a really broad word. There's a huge range of things that can include depending on what you're trying to create. Midjourney breaks down words and phrases into smaller pieces called tokens. So it takes those tokens, compares them to its training data to inform it how to generate the image. Some words will have more impact than others. The ones with the biggest and most interesting impact are often called power tokens. I made a list of some of my favorite power tokens I've come across. They can each have a big impact on their own, and of course you can use any of them in combination and see where it takes you. A lot of this so far has been based off of photography terms, but these can inform the scene across mediums. I could have done this in a different style pretty easily. Remove the previous style, and just adding a couple words into the summary part of this prompt is enough. Then I could guide it more in the style details. And depending on what style you're aiming for, a good practice is to learn about that style. Having a vocabulary in a given medium is really helpful. And overall, if you don't already have that knowledge, it's just a good excuse to learn about various art forms and artists and techniques. There's a lot of places you can go to help learn about this stuff. By far the best Midjourney focused resource I have ever come across is midlibrary.io. It's an amazing way to explore styles and artists and artistic techniques and how Midjourney interprets them. It's an invaluable resource and an incredible way to get inspiration. You can go to all styles and click advanced filters for a bunch of ways to filter, or the classifier tab has them categorized in various ways: techniques, fashion designers, architects, filmmakers, illustrators. Also has this area for artistic techniques. Or this one for general modifiers, which is more like keywords. There's a bunch of really insightful guides here as well, like this one about mimetic style emulation and the process to learn about a style in order to recreate it rather than typing an artist's name. I'm not affiliated with the site or anything, by the way. I've just found it extremely helpful. And something that you can do with Midlibrary is, instead of using the words, you can pull these into Midjourney to use as style references. I'll be getting to those in a little bit. It's a whole different way of prompting that's done a lot more visually. Midlibrary is a great spot for that too. I ran just the prompt dragon, then added some of the coolest style words I found on Midlibrary. Another way to get help with styles to use and words for your prompt is to upload an image, then click the little eye icon and it will describe the image for you. So it will give the subject, known artists with a similar style, and descriptors. You can go through and find interesting words to try out and see how they affect the image. That can be a good way to get help describing a style if you're struggling with that. That basic prompting structure applies across most categories, but there will be more specific terms you may need for things like architecture, fashion, or product photography. Those are a little more niche, but easy to adapt to. One I want to dive deeper on, since it's pretty common but very different, is vector art. For logos, branding, or print products. I'll start with a logo. Generally, I keep the aspect ratio as a square for logos. Just saying coffee shop logo would work, but there's a lot of specific words that can help. Some of my favorites are minimalist, abstract, brand mark, and geometric, or a combination of those. You could do something more specific to your brand like boutique, psychedelic, retro, or maybe they're also a bookstore. Then of course, experiment with the stylize parameter. Going up will affect things like minimalist or brand mark a little bit. They'll still get good results at high stylized values, but something like psychedelic will have a big effect and will usually get too complex for a logo past 200. And logos are one that can be pretty interesting to try out famous logo designers' names with, like Milton Glaser, Paul Rand, Carolyn Davidson, and Ivan Chermayeff. You can upload your brand's color palette as a style reference if you have them as well. I can add text to any of these too by adding quotation marks around the company name. Kevin's Coffee. The text is perfect on this one. I'll get into more specifics around generating text and how to fix these in just a minute, but how did it know to put a guy with a beard on this one? A lot of that will also apply to vector art if you're making things for printing on t-shirts, mugs, or whatever it might be. Some additional words to use would be vector art, vector graphic, graphic design, then things like icon, emblem, shirt design, vinyl sticker, or clip art can be useful even if you're not specifically making it for one of those. Silhouette or outline can be cool, or some from the logos like geometric shapes, abstract, minimalist. Then for something on the complex side, you could add complex or a word like illustration. Try out color palettes, any combination of those things. There's a couple ways to convert these into vector graphics. Adobe Express has a free converter. Just use the PNG to SVG. It works pretty well. I used to use vectorizer.ai. It is better than the Adobe converter, but it's not free anymore. If you're doing this a lot, it could be worth it to pay for that. Then bring it into Adobe Illustrator or whatever program to edit it further. Sometimes the results from these converters are weird to work with, especially if you use a complex image. Back to the topic of text. You can generate text in Midjourney, but it is one of the more difficult things to get right consistently. To get text, just add quotation marks around the text you want. It is case sensitive and can also do special characters. Things that normally have text on them are a lot easier to get results with, like paper, license plates, theater signs, billboards. A lot of the time you'll get it first try on the easier things, but for even slightly complex ideas, it is not consistent, so you'll usually need to re-roll a lot. This one wasn't bad. 2 of these are good. If something is close like this one, try running variations and just re-rolling the closest until you get it. If there's minor issues, you can try inpainting to add or remove letters, or just inpaint over the whole text. I got at least one usable one with each option: the subtle variation, strong variations, and inpainting. It's actually very good at matching text to a style after the fact. So I can grab one of these logos and select the area where I want my brand name to be. I'll just use the word coffee. And it matched this style perfectly with the colors and gradient and a pretty decent font. So now I don't have to bring that into Photoshop or Illustrator and add the text. It's ready to go. Before we move on from prompting, here's a few more just rapid fire top prompting tips. I'll actually start with a few from the Midjourney documentation, then do a bunch of my own. The simpler you can make your phrasing, the better. Instead of show me a picture of lots of blooming California poppies, make them bright, vibrant orange, and draw them in an illustrated style with colored pencils. Instead of that, try bright orange California poppies drawn with colored pencils. Midjourney breaks a prompt into smaller pieces called tokens, and this first option gives a lot of unnecessary or imprecise tokens like show, picture, lots. The second option is only the words that are intended to direct the prompt. It's much more precise. Word choice is important. The more specific you can be, the better. Instead of big, try high, gigantic, enormous. Plural words leave a lot to chance. If you say cats, that could end up in 3, 10, or 100. Specifying 3 cats would be much more helpful. Focus on what you want instead of what you don't want. Prompting a birthday party with no cake will usually end up with a cake. If you want to make sure something isn't there, use the no parameter. Specify what you want. Anything you don't specify will let Midjourney fill in the details. So include every element that is important to you, whether that's the subject, medium, environment, lighting, color, mood, composition. It could be a lot more or a lot less. If you're trying for a full body shot, specify the shoes. Midjourney cuts off the bottom a lot of the time. If you specify the shoes, it will almost always generate the full body. The easiest way to get something cinematic is to add either cinematic still or 35mm cinematic. If you're struggling to figure out how to prompt for something, try searching on the Explore tab. Often you'll find inspiration or a prompt to build off. Try switching between style raw and standard. That little change can make a big difference. If you want some random images, forget everything I just went over and add emojis into the prompt box and see what happens. On that note, just generally experiment. Again, there's no perfect way to prompt. Utilize these tips and also try the opposite. Just experiment. You never know where it might take you. Now that we have some cool images, there's some next steps you can take when you click on one. I've shown a couple of these already, but I'll dive into them further. We have very subtle and strong. The very subtle will give 4 new images that have similar composition and colors to the original, but with some subtle changes. Then the very strong will have more differences in the composition, colors, and details. Almost every time I have an image I like, or once I'm getting close, I'll run these to get some more options. You can upscale, subtle, and creative. Both of these will double the size of your image. Subtle will keep the details very similar to the original. Then creative will add new details to the image. You can experiment with each to see which works best for any given image. Both the upscalers do an amazing job. If you have an image where the face is a little off or distorted, sometimes using a creative upscale will fix it. Rerun will rerun the exact same prompt as is with all the parameters included. Reframe has a few functions within it. You can quickly change the aspect ratio under Reframe. Then I can click Start or End to move the image into a different spot and it will generate the missing areas. Under Zoom, you can zoom out all the way up to 2x. While you're on Reframe or Zoom, you can click Edit Prompt and change anything about the prompt to influence what it generates in those areas it's expanding into. I could pan and add new people or objects into a shot, or as you zoom out, you can zoom out into entirely different scenes. There's some really interesting ways that can be used. There's an old video I made where I uploaded an image of my desk setup and zoomed out and panned into all sorts of different scenes, then edited it all together. I can change up the scene with every zoom, or I could pan to different locations. I can do that in any direction I'd like. And there's even more possibilities to throw some other AI tools on top.
Maybe even add a character.
This has been a lot of fun. I've also seen the Door Brothers make some really creative music videos using that. Also, you can change the prompt without using the Reframe or Zoom. How about a lobster body? What that does is actually called Remix Strong. If I click this More Options button, then select Remix, it shows that I've already ran a Remix Strong because that's what I just did. But there is also this subtle option here. I'll use that as well for a comparison. When I click it, the prompt pops up at the top and I can change it. I do actually like to use Remix Subtle a lot. It's the best way to make changes while retaining a very similar composition to the original. Super good for just quickly iterating on things. That got way creepier than I was expecting with the lobster, so I'll switch to something else for the other tools. Sometimes I'll really like the image, but there's one part that's a little off about it. That definitely happens. Repaint is inpainting or selecting a specific part of the image to change instead of the entire thing. Let's say I want to have open eyes here. Select with either the rectangle or the lasso tool. You can leave the prompt or change it. I'll write what I want for this one. And there it is. This comes in handy a lot. Like if you've got some hands that are off, use Repaint and it should fix it eventually. Sometimes it can take a few tries. Or replace a character. You can even replace a face with a face of your choice using the character reference, which we'll get to soon. References help in many ways to get results you want faster and more easily. The overview of these and how they differ is a good place to start. Image prompt pulls in more of the structure of the image, the subjects, forms, and motifs. Style reference focuses on the aesthetic, like the lighting, colors, more like the vibe of the image. Character reference looks specifically at a character and will try to match the face most importantly. Then depending on how you adjust the weight, it will also pull in clothing, colors, and style. Even more simplified would be structure, aesthetic, character. A lot is now done through references rather than prompting. Overall, for me, it's a lot more fun to blend and direct things with images rather than language. Just feels more intuitive and also faster. But words are still the best for positioning and describing subjects in a scene. So I'll cover how each of these work first before how to use them all together. For each of these, all you have to do is drag an image in. I'll use this little mushroom again, then select which type of reference you want it to be. If you want the same image to be multiple types of references, hold Shift and click the others. For image prompt, it's the little picture. That's what it defaults to. I'll try to change this style to a pencil sketch of a mushroom. That looks great. It's a very similar composition and type of mushroom, but in a completely different style. This looks good, but we can also adjust how strongly the image influences the output with the image weight parameter, --IW. Then a number between 0 and 3 for version 6, between 0 and 2 for version 5. So I'll run a permutation with the weights 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, 1, 2, and 3. Down at 0.25 is a basic pencil sketch. 0.5 has that smaller mushroom more consistently. As we go up more, we start getting more color and more of the forest, but straying a bit from the pencil sketch. And you don't just have to try switching style. I'll use this same image reference and just type wizard. At the default of 1, it gets me a similar composition, but with a wizard, and the hat is slightly mushroom shaped and has these dots on it. There's also more mushrooms within the image. And for reference, here's just running the prompt wizard without an image reference. It's a big difference. Here's at different weights. Below 1 looks great still. When you go up to 2, it doesn't look like a wizard with mushroom characteristics, more like a mushroom with a few wizard characteristics, like the more flowy beard-like stem, and the cap a little more shaped like a wizard hat. The cap with the wizard hat shape is actually pretty awesome. You can also use multiple image references. It can be fun to just browse the Explore tab and find random cool images to use. Here's a cool double exposure. I'll use that. Then this looks like a version of the girl with pearl earrings. I'll use that and send it. Let's see what we got. That actually looks pretty cool. I'll jump to my liked tab and just mix up a bunch of random ones together and see what happens. Doing this with a specific goal in mind is great, but sometimes just throwing random images into the slot machine can be cool too. Not necessarily to end up with a finished image, but something cool to work with further or get inspiration from. Here's what I got. Some of these are cool. Nothing spectacular. You could add a prompt into this process as well to guide it more. Now I'll go back to that mushroom image, but switch this to a style reference instead of an image prompt. I'll prompt it with wizard again and submit. This time it retains essentially none of the original composition and structure, but uses the same colors and vibe. As a comparison, here's the default style reference and default image prompt next to each other. Then just to reinforce what the style reference is doing, I will switch up the prompt, and we can see the scene changes, but the style remains the same. And just like with image prompts, we can control how strongly the style is applied by using --SW for style weight, then a number between 0 and 1000. Here's that same prompt at different style weights. In this case, I prefer it in the lower range, but it will vary from image to image. Again, you can bring in multiple images to use as style references to blend those styles. Just using the prompt wizard, I'll throw a bunch of random styles together, do single references, some with 2, some with 4. We'll see where it goes. It's really fun and starts to feel more like mixing paints on a palette. And some of these look just amazing. This is so powerful, and you can combine style references with image prompts as well. And again, to use a single image as both, hold down Shift and click the other. That's what I did to get this mushroom carousel. There was some remixing and in-painting as well. In addition to these image-based style references, there's also unique codes assigned to styles that Midjourney can create. You can use that to have consistent style applied across images. That also gets extremely powerful. I have links to some databases where people have been posting their curated styles you can use. That's coming up soon. But first, let's move on to this last one here, character reference. So this lets you create consistent characters, and this was the most requested feature in Midjourney ever until they finally implemented it. It works best with characters you generated within Midjourney, but you can use non-Midjourney images too. I'll demo both. I'll just pick a random character from one of the prompts earlier. This one has some uniqueness. Drag it up to the prompt bar, then switch it to a character reference. Now I'll run a permutation. Woman sitting in a cafe, walking through a forest, playing chess, underwater, hiking, cyberpunk, warrior, exploring a cave. And these look great. We can see her across all these different scenes. It made an effort to match her clothing as well. There is a character weight parameter --CW that adjusts how much it tries to match. The default of 100 tries to match the face, clothing, and accessories. Lowering it all the way to 0 will only match the face. And the clothes are rarely perfect, so a lot of the time I have this at 0. As you can tell from these, it will work across different scenes, styles, and camera angles. It also works with different emotions if you prompt for them. All right, now we've got that with a Midjourney generated character, but how about an image of me? This works sort of, just not as well. So I'll try to convert this into a couple styles. It does an okay job, definitely not perfect. With enough rerolls, you can get pretty close. You'll never get it exact, but you can get a lot closer. There is also the ability to in-paint with character references. So if you get a generation where the face is off, or if you want multiple character references in one image, you can add them after the fact. So this is a little weird to do right now. I'm sure they'll make this easier at some point. But to use character reference within Repaint, you need a URL for the image. I can go to the picture of this woman I've been using, right click, then copy image URL. Now I'll go to Repaint on one of these images from before with the group of friends, then select the woman in the middle. I'll change the prompt and just write, the woman in the middle is a Caucasian with red hair. Then --sref space, paste that image address. And it's ready to send. On the generation, we can see it has replaced the character and matches the lighting and style really well. And if I wanted, I could replace these others as well. You can also experiment with using things other than a character, like uploading a texture, gradient, or even just a color. This is super hit and miss. I'll show some explorations I've done. Getting a guitar in different textures works pretty well. It can get the texture almost perfectly, which is amazing and really difficult to do in any other way. So if there's any reason you want a very specific texture on something, and depending on the character weight you use, it may bleed into other parts of the scene. Using just a color can work to get a very particular hue onto something, but definitely can run into issues with bleeding into other parts of the scene, depending on how you use it. This worked by inpainting as well. This one I thought was pretty cool. I wanted a man with a cube head. Instead of describing the cube, I could use a cube as a character reference, and it worked really well. I also tried seeing if I could replace a guitar, so if I had someone playing a guitar across multiple scenes, the guitar would remain the same. It didn't really work. I could get a new guitar with a similar style, which is helpful, but not as perfect of a match as I'd hoped. Better than not doing it at all, though. That's been a lot of fun. Experiment, see what happens. You can combine all of these reference features. I'll use this character again, but I want it in this style, with a similar composition to this image. I'll change the weights of some of those and send that. You can see how much control that gives me. I've been primarily moving towards prompting with images as much as possible. Now, onto one of my new favorite parts of Midjourney. Instead of using images to give context to the style, another way to do this is with style reference seeds, which is a code for a style Midjourney knows how to generate and will give a consistent style across generations. So this is where things get the most fun. There's some databases I'll link to where people categorize some of the best srefs they've found. I'll go through those in a second. You do --sref space, then type a number between 0 and 4 billion. You can also type --sref space random, and Midjourney will pick a random number for you. In the output, you can see it replaced that sref random with this long number. That's the style reference seed. These are two random styles. They look pretty cool. To get more, I'll add that same thing, sref random. Then I'll add a parameter that I haven't mentioned yet, --repeat 10. Repeat runs your prompt however many times you specify with everything the same. Prompt, parameters, and references. But in this case, since I used sref random, it will choose a different random seed each time so I can explore a wide range of aesthetics. There's some really cool ones here, some weird ones too. So to drive home what this is doing, I will copy that sref and use it with a completely different prompt. Woman walking through a forest. Copy the sref. Now cityscape. How about a comic book superhero? And owl flying. I'll do that with a few of these srefs. This is so powerful for getting consistent styles across generations. And just like with the visual style references, you can use the style weight parameter for these with a number from 0 to 1,000, 100 being the default. You'll have to find the balance of how strong the style is and how much you're trying to influence it with your prompt, and then what you want to show through. Each sref will act a little differently. Generally, you can use them across different mediums by prompting, but some of them will be very strong styles and harder to guide in different directions. So that's how they work. They're super fun, but it's a complete slot machine to do it this way, and takes time to find really good ones. People have been calling that mining for srefs. The process is fun, but can burn a lot of fast hours. There's a few people that I've found mining for srefs and indexing them. I have 3 pretty solid ones. I'll link to all of them below. The first is Ali Jules. She posts some really cool ones on X, and just a lot of great Midjourney related content. She's a great follow. She's also been building out this visual index of style references. She did recently switch it to paid to view the full thing, but there's still hundreds to explore for free. This one looks cool. I will copy that and run it with Wizard. I'll just keep using Wizard as my benchmark. I'll just run a bunch of these. Now this one is made by Wade McMaster with Creator Impact. I don't know how many are here, but there's a lot. So I'll grab a few of those. And here's another one from Charlie Q. It doesn't have as many, but there's some really good ones. And in the last Midjourney office hours, David did mention that they're working on some sort of sref explorer. No details on when or what that will look like, but it will be amazing if they make an easy way to navigate to explore these right on the site. Here's all my different wizards. There's some amazing stuff in here. Another note on these is just like with using images as style references, you can combine multiple srefs together. Just add one, then press space and add another. Now it will merge those styles. The other way is to click on the sref and it will pop into the prompt bar. I think these two will be a cool combo. Here is from those random numbers I typed. Then this is the two I picked. These are really cool. You can also adjust how much of each style is applied. Add a double colon, then the relative weight for each. So in this case, the first style will be twice as strong as the second style. Now this is with those weights reversed. Personalization is the newest feature they've rolled out, and it is amazing. Usually when you write a prompt, the algorithms fill in all the missing information with their own preferences. That gives Midjourney its own default aesthetics, which is really the combined preferences and biases of the entire community. With personalization, Midjourney will learn what you like and fill in the blanks with your own preferences. So this will be completely different for every person. You can use it on any prompt by adding --p. Or you can go to the parameters and switch it to on, and it will use it on every prompt without having to type it each time. Here's what it looked like for the prompt wizard, with and without my personalization. My personal code is right here, and I could share that and anyone will be able to generate with my personalization, which leans a lot more dark and surreal, but I'd assume most people will prefer their own codes. That's kind of the idea. There's more to go over and I'll run a lot more prompts with this, but first, to get one, you need to rank at least 200 images. Go to tasks, then click rank images, and then it will have image pairs that pop up. So select which image you like better. Choose based off of aesthetics, not how perfectly it followed the prompt. I don't even read the prompts when I'm ranking these. To go faster, use 1 to select the left image, 2 to select the right image, and 3 to skip. Sometimes you'll have completely different prompts and styles. Other times it will be the same prompt with similar images, just subtle differences. Then if you're ever just not sure which one to pick, click 3 to skip. Do this until you hit at least 200. I assume doing more will help. Once it's all trained up, it will work anytime you hit --p. There's nothing further you need to do. I ran a few more simple prompts with and without it for a comparison. I love what mine does on these simpler prompts. I've been blown away at how much more I like them actually. Here's on some of the other prompts used throughout this video. Sometimes when I'm going for something more specific, it can conflict with what I'm trying to get. So I'll have to turn it off for certain types of images, or adjust how much personalization is applied, which you can do with the stylize parameter. Normally that applies to how much of Midjourney's aesthetic is applied. When you switch to personalization, it controls how much of your personalized aesthetic is applied. I've been liking mine at pretty much every level. You can also combine this with style references and other parameters. I'll use these two srefs again. I'll weight the first one higher. I'll go with raw, make sure personalize is on. I'll add just a little bit of chaos, then an aspect ratio of 3:2. And I'll lower my personalization a bit at stylize 50. And wow, these turned out so good. That style combo fits the vibe of this perfectly. There's two more parameters I want to mention. I didn't mention them alongside the others because they have very specific uses and aren't as common. First is tile. This generates images that can be used as repeating tiles to create seamless patterns. This could be for textures, wallpapers, fabrics, or even something like a 3D scene. How about multicolored stones pattern? First, I'll send it without tile. Now I'll add -- tile at the end and send that. I'll download one from each of these and take it into a seamless pattern checker. This first one doesn't work. Now I'll upload the tiled version and it's perfectly seamless. Now there's also super tiling, which is something I learned from Midlibrary. I'm not sure if he's the original person that came up with it, but I'll do a quick demo of that. I'll copy this prompt to get a Where's Waldo style. I'll change it up a little bit. How about a vibrant futuristic city? All right, this one looks cool. I'll test it in the pattern checker and that looks really repetitive. The super tiling trick will make it less repetitive. I'll open that image up and use vary region. Then select most of the image, but leave some space on each side. Now when I send that, it will replace that area, but remain seamless. And now when I put these all together, there's a lot more variety. I essentially have a much larger and much more detailed tile now. So here's the before and after. Another unique use for the tile parameter is something I came across from Nick St. Pierre. You can use it to convert an image into a seamless 360-degree photo. So this is really cool. I had actually done this before using generative fill to hide the seam, but I'd never thought to try it with the tile parameter. I'll do a prompt with a panoramic view of a volcano, an aspect ratio of 2:1, then add the tile parameter. Actually, I ran that again to add some lava, and this one looks awesome, so I will upscale that. Then I'll use this website I found for viewing 360-degree photos. Just drag it in, and it's looking pretty solid. So I'll switch to the VR view. This looks amazing. I can rotate all around and never find a seam. So I would probably still use the generative fill method since a lot of the results I got turn out a little weird when Midjourney tries to make the top and bottom tileable too, especially when I tried going wider. So I'll just really quick show how to do it in generative fill. So this is one without the tile parameter, so it would not work as is. I'll bring that into Photoshop, go to filter, other, offset, then drag it to the side a bit. That's good. Now I'll select the rectangular marquee and drag that over the seam and use generative fill, no prompts needed. This one's a little weird since there's light and dark right next to each other, but it'll still work. That's it. Export and bring it into the viewer. There was a really amazing example in the comments on Nick's post of all these people on the Titanic. They used Magnific to upscale. You would never get this many perfectly sharp faces out of Midjourney. Magnific is amazing. It's hard for me to ever recommend because it is so expensive, but the results you can get from it are unparalleled. The stop parameter will finish a job partway through the process to create blurrier or less detailed results. So I'll grab the seed from that woman I've been using. You type -- stop, space, and a number between 0 and 100. The 100 is the default, basically just finishing the full job. So as we're watching this generate a 100, basically what the stop parameter does is just stopping it at different parts of this process. So here's how that looks at each of the different stop values. It can be useful at 80 and 90 to get less detailed and softer images. V6 tends to add a lot of detail, so I use it to lower that sometimes. I have found very few other uses than that. I've tried it in prompts where you want like a shaky cam or motion blur, you know, like someone being chased through the woods. But really, I can get a good result just by prompting. But the other thing I have used it for is when I generate something that's going to be a background that I know I'm going to add blur to in Photoshop. So in particular for thumbnail backgrounds, I'll use stop at 60 to 80. I'll still typically add some blur later, but I'll be able to get a better idea of what it's going to look like right within Midjourney. So that's helpful. That's about all I've ever used it for where I actually found it useful. Multi-prompting only works well on V5 and earlier. This is mostly because V6 is so much better with understanding language. It's not necessary. About how this works, just in case you need it, separate concepts using : as a separator. You can assign relative importance to each concept using a number right after the colons. So using space ship, that gives you a spaceship, but space : ship gives you a ship in space. If you give more importance to space, there will be more space in the image, or more importance to ship, there will be a bigger ship. And these numbers are all based on their values relative to each other. So 2 to 1 is the same as 100 to 50. And again, that just does not work very well in V6. There's also a parameter -- video. This one does only work in Discord. The only thing I've mentioned so far where that's the case. All it does is make a short video out of the image being generated. It does look pretty cool. To use it in Discord, you add -- video to the end of your prompt. Then once the job is finished, click add reaction, then select the envelope emoji and you will get a DM from the Midjourney bot with a link to view the video at. So it's just another parameter that's there if you ever need it. It's not generative text to video or anything, although Midjourney is actually working on a video model. They say they are just not close on it. I'll use this prompt again for one more example. I can get rid of this, and I'll use this sref. It's a really interesting one I was experimenting with. For parameters, I'll leave it at 16:9, add a little bit of chaos, switch to raw, and turn personalize on. This is a really strong sref, so I'll lower the weight to 20. I'll also lower my personalization to 50, and that should be good. I'll send it. These are awesome. That sref gives such a unique vibe. I've ran it a few more times. I think I like this one the most. That is essentially all I know about Midjourney packed into one video. I hope it's helpful. All of the resources are linked down in the description. And of course, make sure to check out Futurepedia.io to keep learning about everything related to AI. Find the perfect tool for any use case. Stay up to date with the top 100 tech companies' developments in AI with the AI Innovations Tracker. There's a curated database of AI tutorials, tons of additional learning resources, and all sorts of things being added to the site regularly. Sign up for the newsletter to get AI news, tools, and tutorials delivered straight to your inbox, and subscribe to get more videos like this one on your homepage. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.